This is my dad, Ernest Lombard. Hey, Dad.
Hey.
He's got a lot of interesting stories from living in Maine, and there's this particular man. I was asking Dad about him, the guy with the big long beard and the spaghetti and all, so just going to let Dad take over here and tell us what he remembers.
Well, now, of course, I'm going to get the story in the proper setting. I figured to be about over 60 years ago, back up there in the state of Maine, and I was about 7 years old at the time, and I had 4 brothers, one older and the rest younger. And one of the most fascinating experiences that we ever enjoyed was the experience of Ferb when he came over to work with my father and us boys out there putting up hay or down in the woods, cutting logs and pulpwood. And one of the things that we really fascinated, he had a snow white beard, and his hair, he never cut either one of them. But his snow white beard and a hair that was just looked like a big old rat's nest. And he really proud of his beard. He didn't care much about his hair. He let that go. But he loved his beard. And he would take it, and boy, he'd take and brush that. That thing looked good. Well, one day there, my mother had made up a big old cast iron pot full of spaghetti. And then she had several pans of hot biscuits and all, and that's the way we ate back home at the farm up there. And so, but when you sat down to the table with Ferb, you either paid attention, you didn't talk, you just ate. Because if you didn't, he'd get ahead of you and you wouldn't have any food when you got there. Well, that day, old Ferb, he went to work on that spaghetti. And when it dropped down on his beard, he never bothered, he just kept on shoveling. Well, when it finally, the meal was all over, he sort of ran back there, and said, well, Phil, that's what he called my mother, Phil, that was a fine meal. And he says, he looks down, oh, yep, and he takes his fingers, and then he goes, and so, then, when he got that all out of there, he kept going until he managed to get all of it out of there. But he still had it pretty well stained up. So he went over to the cast iron sink that we had, because this sink didn't have any pump water or anything. You had to take and haul it in with water, bucket. And he dumped some bucket into the old wash basin there, and he went to work on his beard. Now, all this time, his hair looked terrible, but all this time he would never touch his head. He'd just work on his beard. And when he finally got it the way he wanted to, he sat back down and he's got his little old pack out, his little pouch he had there, and he pulled out some shred of tobacco, and boy, he slapped that into the side of his jaw, and he went to chewing. Well, that's Ferb for you. But don't just think that he's a joke in many ways. He was funny because us boys really enjoyed watching him. But when you got you out there working on the hay rack, putting up loose hay, we didn't have baled hay back then. A bale, we didn't know what that was. But we had a hay rack, and hauled it by a horse, and we'd have us boys would be up on top, arranging the hay that my father on one side and Ferb on the other would throw up on the wagon. Well, I'll tell you right now, with old Ferb, he just about worked the pants right off of you. I mean, when you got done to the day's work, you would work down to a nubbin. That's all there is to it. Well, old Ferb, he'd say, come on, boys, get that thing done, and he'd throw up another batch of that old hay, and we'd work hard at it some more, Well, when we got done, like I say, the day we figured we'd earned a rest, and we didn't have any trouble sleeping that night.
I bet.
So I wanted to let you know about old Ferb, because he was a hard-working man, he was. And comical in many ways, but more of a man than many are today.